President, I'm pleased to rise and make a contribution to the Great Ocean Road and Environments Protection Amendment Bill, a bill that is dear to the hearts of many in this chamber. And I know that Mr Reardon and Ms MacArthur have worked very hard to see a better structure to coordinate activities along the Great Ocean Road, and we support a coordinated committee, but we don't support this bill's option. Unfortunately, the government has taken some very good ideas, I think is the way to describe it, and got them wrong. And that's partly because they haven't listened to the community, they haven't put in place the right structures and the right outcome, and that is unfortunate because it's a lost opportunity both to, in a cost-effective and reasonable way, put in reasonable structures that will protect the environment, enhance tourism, and do so in a cost-effective way that has community involvement. But that is not what has ended up here, and I'm going to outline very briefly how this has gone wrong. The bill outlines the powers and functions of the Great Ocean Road, Coasts and Park Authority as a public land manager, including its powers to prescribe regulations. It provides for the transfer of land management responsibilities for land managed under 6 Acts of Parliament, and to that extent the principle of bringing these together was the right approach. It's just that they've botched the next part of it. Provides for the creation of a new trust account, a trust fund, which will receive the revenue generated. And I think the fear increasingly with this body is it's going to become a heavy tax authority that's going to scoop in a lot of money. Now, some of it might be legitimately collected from tourists, but locals are about to be clobbered, and I think that is one of the fears that people have. So it defines public land, it lays out a number of points, amends the definition of responsible entity in section 3 to exclude a traditional owner management board. Clauses 5, 6 and 7 talk about the scenic landscapes. It amends the Great Ocean Road Environments Protection Act 2020 and allows for the land of the Great Ocean Road is situated on to be declared part of the Great Ocean region and coast and the scenic landscapes. The object of the authority is to protect, conserve, enhance and manage public land. It's intended to broaden the authority's object to include maximising the environmental values of public land and coastal assets, and that's important long haul. Section 48, Clause 11 sees Section 48 substituted for new sections, and they deal with agreements for services. This prevents the authority from entering into management agreement in relation to the land management managed under the National Parks Act unless agreement is entered into with Parks Victoria. So it doesn't take land from Parks Victoria. It makes some minor technical amendments, provides further powers and delegation of authority, appointment of directors, and so forth that you would expect with such an authority. Section 70, new Section 70 at Clause 19 allows the authority to enter into agreements for control and management of assets. Clause 20 has the effect of treating any lease or licence or permit granted as though it were granted by the authority, so it's a continuity clause. And so forth as we go forward. There's a number of issues that arise. The Great Ocean Road is very important for Victorian tourism, as I'm sure my colleagues will say. And in August 2018, the opposition released a policy, and we said an elected Liberal Nationals government will create a new Great Ocean Road Authority to manage designated Crown land along the Great Ocean Road. The new authority will replace existing arrangements, including local government, Parks, Vic, DELP, Great Ocean Road Coast Committee, to manage land along the coast. The government established a Great Ocean Road Task Force chaired by former public transport ministers Mr Batchelor and Terry Moulder. That reported in August 2018, made a number of significant recommendations. All of this is important just to know some of the history. The bill reinforces many of the concerns and leaves many issues unresolved to be dealt with the regulations, and this is increasingly the way of this government. Stuff is not specified in the Act in the way it ought to be. It is left to more nebulous regulation. There has been very considerable consultation with all of the shires, the VTEC, many of the chambers of commerce, and many of the tourism bodies, as well as local MPs and others. The truth is, though, that the bill provides the authority with broad powers and authority over public land along the Great Ocean Road. However, there is a lot of uncertainty over how the bill will impact on locals and existing agencies in the region, as well as the impact on consolidated revenue. The government has conceded there will be extensive regulations to cover all areas of the bill, but not yet dealt with, making it difficult to assess the full impact on residents, businesses and other stakeholders. And that is why we seek, Acting President, to move a reasoned amendment that will say that all words after that be omitted and replaced with the words "This House refuses to read the bill a second time until the government has produced adequate time for consultation with stakeholders." I would like that to be circulated, thank you, Acting President, to assess the impact of this bill and has released the proposed regulations. We think it's a reasonable request. We think that the truth of the matter is that this is a very impactful bill, and the full impacts cannot be properly assessed without seeing what the regulations actually do. And it's, increasingly, as I say, the government is using these regulation powers. They just get ahead of power in a bill and then they go nuts and knock their socks off later. And that's, I think, one of the great concerns. I think that, by and large, the councils in the area do the best they can, and the coordination of a lot of the activities along the Great Ocean Road can't be left to councils because they don't cover sufficient area. The coordination can't happen with coastal management authorities in the traditional way because, again, they don't cover sufficient area. There's obviously Parks Victoria, and they have a significant holding of land through all of that area, of course, and that is proper, but we note the need to get a better arrangement there. Now, I mean, look, in a lot of these things, the governance of this is going to be very important, and I'm reminded today we've actually seen the investigation into allegations of collusion with property developers at Kingston City Council, October 2021, by the Ombudsman, which draws our attention, I think, to questions of proper governance and how things can be operating. And I note that in this case, allegations were made. They were followed up by the Ombudsman quite properly. I'm not sure that she had any alternative in the end. The allegations were all nameless allegations, and the findings of this were that there was no improper conduct. It's in that sense a clean bill of health. It does make recommendations, as I say, about governance. The senior planner, Mr. Ian Neese, is effectively pointed to, but not given a full negative finding, but nonetheless it does not come out of this as a bureaucrat with the capacity that you would expect. And the Planning Department, Jonathan Goodman and Ian Neese, both, I think, this looks bad, and the relationship at Cavendish Properties and Ian Neese, I think, is concerning. But having said that, it does make, in the probity findings and the access to councils, it does make very clear findings on the conduct of former councillors. It clears absolutely Councillor Jeff Gledhill. It clears other officers and councillors. So in that sense, this matter of governance that is so central to what we do at the moment is actually quite a significant focus for, I think, most of us at the moment. I mean, I was interested to read in the paper about the council planner dined with developer at local marina but was not corrupt, says Ombudsman. So you can scratch your head at all of that. I think the Ombudsman has done a very thorough job. I think her clearing a number of councillors and actually in effect saying that they've done everything proper in terms of declarations is important. And this land management task that we're going to have down along the coast is significant. There's going to be a lot of development in the Surf Coast, along the Otways. All of that is going to be important because it's got to be regulated properly. There's got to be proper oversight over that development. And these case studies that come to us from the Ombudsman increasingly and the Operation Sandon at IBAC make it clear that there's got to be a really close look at how this operates and to ensure that we've got proper oversight. I note that one of these developers, Cavendish Properties, has sued Cameron Howe, and you know, let me be clear about this developing trend where a developer who has an application before a council can put a defamation action against someone as a way to knock them out of voting. That is a concern, I've got to say. And again, coming back to this point of oversight, transparency and proper governance over many of the developments that we're going to see along the Great Ocean Road. Now, I, for one, want to see the area preserved in a way that the community also, I think, by and large wants. And, you know, as somebody like so many Melburnians has had a long history of travelling to the Great Ocean Road and having holidays there from quite a young age, you know, we have seen the development in parts of Torquay, the density and the intensity of development, and that, of course, has to be managed. So the point I'd make, in parallel with the work of this authority that this bill establishes, we would want to, I think, you know, sort of make sure that the development that occurs along the coast is sensitive, it does recognise the environmental values, that it is within proper and reasonable bounds. Now, you know, there's no question that that whole coast is going to see more population growth, and well, I should say about the population growth that you know, we've actually had a significant pause or a stop and a reversal indeed of population growth. The new figures released to the 30th of March from the ABS showed a tremendously bad outcome for Victoria. We were the only state or territory that had a net negative fall in population, and we had a 0.6% fall in the 12 months to the end of April. To the end of March, I should say. And that was 42,900 people less in the state than 12 months before. So that is a very significant impost. Well, Mr. Finn, I think some people have flown the coop already. Daniel Andrews has not made this a welcoming place. We're the most locked down place in the world, the long lockdown. It's a record that no city aspired to or would be proud of. And you can see why people have made the decision to move to other states, and in this case, particularly to Queensland. But I'm taking a step beyond the bill. My point in talking about population was that there will be you know, a resumption of population increase. I think it's unlikely that it would be on the same scale and intensity of its own accord that was occurring before. I mean, some of those years through the 2000s, well over 100,000. I think one year we're up to 147,000 additional people each year. You know, in 1 year, that's a huge population increase, and you know, you can see that when you drive through Armstrong's Creek. You can see it when you drive into Torquay, and people know the pressure that's on the Bellarine and other areas down this coast. Now, I want to note that Mrs. MacArthur and Mr. Reardon have done quite a lot of work on this concept of having a proper oversight group that would manage many of these points here, and be in a position to levy a sensible tax, as it were, a sensible charge on those who would come to the area and enable them to make some contribution. But I think this has to be managed very carefully, and all the signs are that the government intends to, in an unsophisticated way, slap increased taxes and charges on everyone for miles around through this mechanism. That would concern us. Now, I note that there's a number of amendments. Mr Medic has withdrawn his amendment. He seems to have come to some arrangement with the government. He'll no doubt explain that when he gets in and stands up in the chamber. The amendments of Mr Grimley, we don't think go far enough. They don't provide enough protections. To the extent that they are better than nothing, we would not oppose them. But notwithstanding that, we don't think they go far enough, and I'm sure Mrs MacArthur in particular will have more to say on those matters. So we will seek to put a reasoned amendment to the chamber. If that is unsuccessful, we will oppose the bill.